Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Open access networks are becoming a more popular option for communities to be able to provide broadband service to everybody in the community. Be right back and I'll talk about a couple of stories there. Hey, thanks for joining me. This is Rick Usey with Broadband Deployment News. I saw a couple of recent stories about open access broadband. So it's obviously becoming more popular, and this is a good option for municipalities or counties that are having a hard time reaching maybe everybody in the community. So one way is to a public-private partnership, and that's often a good option as well, where if you've got most of an area covered and there's an internet service provider there that for example, a city and that internet service provider can partner together to be able to make it more affordable to get the broadband deployed. And then you've got one operator basically there that's providing the service. But another option is open access networks, where you've got maybe a city that builds the infrastructure, or the city partners with an operator that builds the infrastructure, but then they make that open to everybody. In other words, the city may own the infrastructure, but they allow multiple retail ISPs to ride along that infrastructure and provide internet services. So that's becoming a popular option. So I was going to talk about that today in some of these stories. And I'll have a link, or there's already a link in the description below this video on a couple of different things. One, I've got an ebook that we provide up on our website that you can download if you want to learn more about open access networks. And then also I'll have a link to all of the articles that I'm discussing here. So this is the first one I saw, and several of these are very recent, but this one was back from February 3rd. Open access broadband networks in the U.S. get a lift from Gigapower. So this was an interesting joint venture here. AT&T's formation of Gigapower, the joint venture it's in the process of creating with asset management firm BlackRock, is drawing more attention to the open access broadband model. Open access networks, where multiple ISPs and service providers share space on the same fiber infrastructure, are more common outside the U.S. than inside the U.S. because large telcos and cable operators have historically wanted exclusive access to their broadband networks. That's not necessarily true. It's because we tend to be more privately owned here, maybe than in Europe. So, you've got internet service providers that have put in the investment in lots of different areas on their own for their own infrastructure, and then obviously they own that. So it's not so much that they wanted exclusive access to their broadband networks; they're already there. So once they built it, they didn't necessarily want to share it with other people. However, that trend is changing as broadband companies realize they may be able to get a faster return on their fiber investment by selling wholesale capacity to others. So that would be a situation where maybe somebody like AT&T says, you know what, we don't have infrastructure or network here. Maybe we can create an open access network, and we can be a tenant on there, and then they can share that access with others. And in this case, they're kind of benefiting from both sides. So they are an internet service provider on that network, plus since this is a joint venture, maybe they get revenue as well from others that are going to ride that infrastructure. So it says here, Gigapower will initially target 1.5 million customer locations across the U.S., and AT&T will be the anchor tenant on the network. AT&T plans to leverage its existing nationwide sales team to sell fiber to customers in the new Gigapower market. So these would be new opportunities for AT&T to sell broadband internet in areas without having to go it alone on deploying that infrastructure. So they're partnering up. The company is only initially building fiber to 1.5 million locations. That's still a lot of locations. If the Gigapower joint venture is a success, this is the CEO, Stankey, said that AT&T may decide to build fiber to more locations outside its footprint. So if this does work out, then this will give them another way to provide internet to other locations. And then I saw several other stories I want to talk about here. So this one is Wilmar, Texas. Wilmar planning director says city's residents could soon experience the best internet in the state. Wilmar City Council authorized staff to move forward with drafting a contract with Hometown Fiber to build out a 19.3 million open access fiber network with a speed of up to 10 gigs per second. Let's see. Hometown Fiber, and Hometown Fiber is a company based in Maple Grove, Minnesota. The proposal to provide broadband internet services to Wilmar states that Hometown Fiber will provide the conceptual overview, network design, and phased build-out of a fiber optic network. So Hometown Fiber is doing the deployment work. Ever since I came on with the city of Wilmar, getting symmetrical high-speed internet was a priority for me, Walker stated. This is Justice Walker. Justice Walker. He's the Wilmar Planning and Development Director, Justice Walker. And he's either a very young guy or they used his high school picture here. This guy's very young, but obviously very smart here. So says, getting symmetrical high-speed internet was a priority for me ever since he came on with the city of Wilmar. I can't think it's been that long because he's very young. Walker stated, noting that he reached out to multiple independent internet service providers to ask them about their capital improvement plans in the city and if they intended to make Wilmar a gig city. Really wasn't that fruitful a conversation. I just kind of found out that a lot of them didn't have intentions to do that. Along with installing the infrastructure at no cost to the city, Hometown Fiber will maintain the network for the foreseeable future and has agreed to revenue sharing with the city of at least $250,000 per year, according to Walker. So this is a situation where it sounds like Hometown Fiber is going to be doing everything, and it's going to be a revenue share back to the city as opposed to maybe the city owning this infrastructure after Hometown builds it. So there's several different ways and models with these open access networks as to who builds it, who owns it, who installs the customer. Sometimes the city does the installation and the retail ISPs just provide the service. Sometimes the retail ISPs do the installation. Sometimes a third party like this, Hometown, will do the installation and take care of everything. Revenue bonds would be issued to pay for the construction of the network, which would be paid by the revenue generated by the network. So they're planning on this not costing the city or the residents anything. Walker noted that open access fiber networks are a solution for providing rural residents with long-term, quality, affordable broadband internet. Hometown Fiber would build the infrastructure needed and provide the maintenance, and the city would own the infrastructure. Independent internet service providers would pay fees to use the network to provide the service, and that's pretty much the open access model. So I took a look at what Wilmar, this was Wilmar, Texas on this one, right? So what Wilmar, Texas looks like, just making sure, yeah, right here, on the broadband map, the FCC broadband map. And, you know, as I clicked around on here, obviously this is kind of the center of town. As you click around, there's definitely service. When you see a town like this, there's usually service because there's a lot of people, as you can see here. So it's certainly, you know, internet service providers can get a return on investment. So as we look at this, we see Charter here is providing gig service. There's SpaceX, but that, you know, so the SpaceX, it's available most everywhere. That's pretty much it here. So we got Charter providing gig service. There's several others providing low speed kinds of services, wireless kinds of services. But if you click around, Charter's pretty much everywhere and in this part of town. So really where this becomes an issue, I think. So it sounds like well, first off, I see some issues on the map, and you know, this happens, and this is where things don't seem right on the map. You've got Charter. If I click right here, this is Charter, and then if I click right here, apparently Charter is not listed. You know, so these different addresses right here mixed in. This is a red dot right here, and Charter is not listed. So I'm wondering if this is just Charter. If this is either a mistake on the map where these are shown as broadband serviceable locations that should not be, in other words, these are structures that are not supposed to have broadband, or if Charter missed, and this has certainly happened, whoops, it zoomed in there, if Charter has somehow missed adding these as addresses that they serve, because as you can see, they're intermixed here. They're on streets where certainly you would expect Charter, if they serve these houses on this street, that they would serve this one. And same thing here. You got all these houses in this one particular area, and yet you've got this one red dot here where it shows Charter does not have service. So that is shown as an unserved location here. So that's very unlikely. So again, it's either that this is not really a broadband serviceable location and Charter doesn't serve it because it's not a place that can get broadband, or if it needs broadband, maybe it's a garage or something like that, or Charter missed something there. But also the other thing about this is, as you move out away from the city center, you've got more of these red dots, and these red dots are more likely unserved. So, you know, you can see why too, because you've got more dense population here, and then you've got some areas here where you've got what I'm assuming are structures that should get broadband, but yet you don't have that shown here. So this is where Wilmar, for example, has probably approached Charter and said, hey, we've got these unserved areas of town. Charter, can you come out and go ahead and install fiber or cable or whatever you're doing out there? Can you get that out to that area? And I guess Charter maybe didn't move quick enough. So now Charter, it looks like, is going to have competition from this city network that's this open access network in areas because Charter did not expand to some of these areas that weren't served. I don't know the whole story, but again, as you get further out from the city and you get less dense population, that's where you have these red dots that probably are areas that are not served. These red dots here probably are served, and this is just my guess based on looking at the map. Then we got another story, similar story I want to look at, citywide open access broadband network coming to McKinney, Texas. In this case, an open access broadband network is planned for the city of McKinney, according to a presentation at February 7th City Council work session. So here it's a company called Sci-Fi Networks, a privately owned telecom company that specializes in citywide fiber optic networks, is expected to invest over $100 million in the project. The network will offer 10 gig symmetrical broadband service to McKinney residents, businesses, and other facilities through an open access fiber network. The network implementation requires no hard cost outlay from the city. So again, the city's not having to pay for this. This network is operationalized in a fiber to the premises model, meaning that every premises in the address in the city of McKinney would receive fiber to its sidewalk. So this is, again, I think a situation where maybe a lot of the city has good internet, but maybe there's these further out areas that don't. And we'll take another look at their map here in a minute. The network is expected to take between 12 and 24 months to design and another 60 months to build. So it's going to be a while. Our Sci-Fi Networks has implemented this type of fiber network in cities across the country, including in Texas cities like Arlington and Odessa. And we'll see here in a moment another city that was just recently announced. So we take a look at McKinney, Texas on the broadband map. It's a similar situation. I see lots of green dots. And again, here's a place that, what's going on here? Is it not really a serviceable location, or is it that the service providers that's providing service here did not put it in correctly? So you've got AT&T copper. So you got DSL, 50 megabits per second, and that's pretty much it other than wireless and satellite. But right next door, we have AT&T DSL still, but we've got Charter. So again, Charter may have missed that address. So it looks like Charter is also a provider here. Looks like AT&T, again, just has DSL 100 by 20 in that location. Here I've got AT&T. Here we got fiber to the prem, AT&T, 5 gig. And Cable One, 1 gig by 50. So you've got a couple of different service providers in this area of town. Again, I've got Cable 1 gig, Charter a gig. I don't have AT&T fiber there. That's weird that AT&T fiber was close by somewhere else and not here. So again, how accurate is all of this? I don't know. But for the most part, if you look at the city, you've got lots of places that have service. You've got some that are questionable that don't. I'm just thinking that somebody did not record that either that's not a broadband serviceable location, or the service provider like Charter or Cable One or somebody missed that they actually provide service there. And then again, as we get further out from the city, we've got these areas that I'm assuming are broadband serviceable locations with customers that you don't have many customers per mile. Here's the airport over here. So that's the McKinney Airport, but still you've got this neighborhood right here, but then you've got, let's see what we have in this neighborhood with lots of density there. We've got AT&T copper, says DSL. We got Charter. That's pretty much, we got Charter covering that neighborhood, but right outside that neighborhood, we don't have anything other than satellite and wireless. And the same for these locations. So these all may be within the city of McKinney, but again, maybe they approached, I don't know if they approached Cable One and or Charter and AT&T and said, hey, what can you do to get these areas connected or not? But they've decided to move ahead on this open access network. And again, what that's probably going to mean is that all of these residents are going to have, in this area, you're going to have another choice for high-speed broadband. So they'll have Charter. They may have AT&T fiber or Cable One, as we saw, and then plus this open access network. But then these other areas that are not connected will have, at the very least, access to that open access network. So, and since this is open access, if they put that network in there, that Charter can participate in that. So Charter, Cable One, AT&T, or any other local internet provider, or even not internet provider, could become a retail internet service provider if they're not having to really provide any infrastructure. So they could just be a marketing kind of arm that really does nothing except market a service, at least at the very minimum, a connection to broadband, and then they maybe build a customer, depending on how they're going to do that, And that's pretty much all I need to do. So it doesn't necessarily lock out AT&T and Charter and Cable One and anybody else. They have the opportunity to participate in that open access network, and they don't have to build the infrastructure. So that may be what happens. And this is also in Texas. This is Greatwood residents to get fastest internet speeds in the nation. So this is very similar to what we were just reading. And this is the same network operator. So we have Sugar Land City Council recently approved an agreement for a citywide fiber optic network that will enable internet speeds that are among the fastest in the nation. Sci-Fi Networks, again, same one as McKinney, will fund, build, and operate Sugar Land Fiber City. The network will enable all residents and businesses in Sugar Land to access fast, affordable, and reliable fiber service up to 10 gigs of speed. All Sci-Fi Networks fiber cities are open access, enabling multiple service providers to deliver service in the city and provide residents with a wider range of options. The network also ensures underserved areas in the city have equal access to broadband infrastructure. So again, that's the goal, and what they're doing here is it's not so much to overbuild areas that have internet, but it's these unserved areas that maybe are just going to be left out in the cold without doing this. So again, I don't know if they approach the incumbent operators there, but that's the reason for doing this. SFI has agreed to pay Sugar Land for each connection and quarterly fees for using the city's right-of-way. The project's cost is completely funded through private investment at no cost to the city. So once again, the city's not having to pay for this, and they're going to get money back for use of their infrastructure, whatever they have, the rights of ways, I should say. The build-out should require no more than 48 months, so this one's going to go a little faster. Then we've got, in Idaho broadband funding goes to 2 open access networks. The Idaho Broadband Advisory Board made 2 awards earlier this month. An award for $20 million went to the Idaho Regional Optical Network, or IRN. It's a cool name. And the Intermount Infrastructure Group for a 198-mile north-south fiber network. The second award for $6.2 million went to the Port of Lewiston to connect the port to the IRN network. It's an open access wholesale network, so Scott Corbett, general manager of the Port of Lewiston, in an interview with Telecompetitor, we will own the network and individual providers will rent out fiber. So in this case, they will own the network. And so this is not where they're getting something paid back. They will own it, and or they could, I suppose. But in other words, the city owns it, and they're not giving it to somebody else and then getting some paid for rights of way or anything like that. The new network will cross through some of the most unserved and underserved areas of the state, Corbett said. We'll be able to allow different internet providers to connect to this backbone and take connectivity to places that never had it before. Numerous anchor institutions are eager to connect to the network, he said. So again, similar kind of thing there. City of Eagle, also in Idaho, and they're using some ARPA funds. Eagle is putting most of its federal COVID relief dollars to work building a citywide broadband network. In the past 2 years, the City of Eagle has spent $4.7 million on its ARPA funds toward planning and developing a network of broadband fiber in the Boise suburb. Mayor Jason Pierce, who has a background in cable communications companies, said his goal is to use the system to wire up anyone in the city who wants a gigabit of download, gigabit per second, I'm sure, and upgraded speeds at their home for around $50 a month. So that's a good price for gig. He says this is targeted at existing subdivisions cable companies haven't served. So again, targeted where they're not being served with fiber because of Eagle's lower density, which means cable companies won't make as much of a profit per mile of fiber dug as they would in dense cities like Meridian. Now, whether they're going to overbuild the areas that are more dense, I don't know. But again, any cable operators that happen to be there in those denser areas can participate in this open access network if they want to. The idea is modeled off of the public broadband network in Ammon, a suburb of Idaho Falls. So Ammon, Idaho is really pretty well known in the open access broadband world because they were one of the first ones to do this and do it in a way that's pretty slick, where there's a public web interface, and really the city does everything, and then internet service providers can come on there and market the service, and they can market different types of services, different speeds. They can market different ancillary kinds of services on top of that. And then the subscriber or the citizen in Ammon can just go to a website and they can choose an internet provider and click, I want them. And then I think a lot of it gets provisioned in the background, and it's all taken care of. And they can change their mind and next month say, oh, I want to use this one here. So they make it very easy to switch back and forth. So it's obviously very competitive. There are several internet service providers that are participating in that. So Ammon is kind of a model that a lot of companies have been looking at to model themselves after. I can see here it didn't make sense for a private company to do it because they have to make money. He said, we don't have to make money. We need to provide services. So that's the situation that a lot of communities are in, cities, is that they're not looking at it as a profitable thing. They're trying to make their community better and be able to provide internet to everybody that's there. And if there's some impediment to that, getting some of these unserved or underserved areas covered by a private operator, they come in and do it on their own. And again, that's why private operators need to make sure that they're responding. But again, they're not locked out of this in an open access network, which is nice. Pierce said his main goal was, instead of taking public funds and paying a private company to invest in covering underserved areas, he wanted a network the people of Eagle own themselves. This means although Eagle will own the fiber network, a private company will be the one to install the internet at your home, handle your connectivity problems, and ultimately provide you the service. So this is a model where, again, there's different kinds, where the city sounds like they're going to be doing the install. So they'll be installing the fiber. They'll be doing everything using these. I think this was the ARPA funds one. They'll be using the funds to do that. And it sounds like they'll have installers that will go out actually to connect up each subscriber that wants it. And so the private companies don't need to do any of that. The city is doing all of that, and the city owns the network. But there'll be multiple ISPs that will be able to resell the service, and they'll be doing the billing. So they will market the service and they will bill the service, and they may be providing the end user technical support as well. Quite often that is the case on some of these open access networks where the city will go out and respond to things. Somebody at the internet service provider will take the call, try to troubleshoot the problem, and then if it turns out that, there's a fiber cut, or it looks like the equipment at the customer home is having a problem, then the city would send somebody out to take care of those kinds of issues. And finally, a new collaboration in Elkhart County, so this is Indiana, expands access to broadband internet. The not-for-profit or nonprofit internet provider ChoiceLight is joining forces with Elkhart County to expand access to broadband internet in the county. In a press release, ChoiceLight CEO Regina Emberton says the internet provider will manage the county's fiber optics. Quite frankly, government is not the most efficient in its operations, and that's a true statement. So we've decided to partner with ChoiceLight, and we find this is going to be a win-win for our communities. So again, government is not always the best at doing things. They can do some things pretty well. Like maybe they are pretty good at having people go out and install fiber and get all that stuff running, but maybe not in the sales and the marketing of things. So they're, again, doing this open access model, but partnering with somebody that, in this case, can do even some of the things that, like installations, those kinds of things. Last November, this is a press release from ChoiceLight. Last November, Elkhart County Commissioners passed a license and operation agreement with ChoiceLight. The agreement gives ChoiceLight, a not-for-profit professional fiber network, authorization to manage the county's 189-mile fiber network. So in this case, the county's not even wanting to do that. And it's not a city. This is a county. Cities might be in a better position to do that. Elkhart County citizens remain the owners of our fiber network, so they still own it, said Brad Rogers, president of the Elkhart County Commissioners. ChoiceLight will manage the day-to-day business and operations on our behalf. Leveraging ChoiceLight's experience and expertise allows us to accelerate the return on our fiber investment, improve efficiencies, and connect more Elkhart County businesses. For nearly 2 decades, ChoiceLight has built and managed fiber infrastructure in St. Joseph and Marshall County. So they're already providing internet nearby. So that's, again, that's a good thing to have that experience and somebody to be able to do that that's already providing that service. So again, I linked below a link to an ebook about open access networks if you want to learn more about that, plus links to all of those stories if you want to read those on your own. And don't forget what we can do if you are a county, a municipality, any kind of internet provider, but we provide managed broadband services to internet service providers. And in an open access situation, for example, the city may build out the broadband network, and then they're looking for retail internet service providers to provide service over that. Well, we can help there. So if you need somebody to provide internet support for the subscriber, we can do that. Or if you would like to provide something in addition to a connection, but you don't have the infrastructure for that, come look to us. For example, if you want to provide voice over IP service to residences or businesses, or an IPTV product, we have something there that we can help with. We have an fully turnkey IPTV product that you can offer to somebody. So that would work really well in an open access network, because again, you've got a lot of competition. So if you've got, if you're going to you're riding that municipal network, for example, and you're competing with other retail operators there, you don't want to just be a dumb pipe. So if you can provide other services, then it's more likely that you're going to get customers than maybe somebody who's just providing a connection. So if you can provide a connection, plus you can provide phone service for them, voice over IP, plus you can provide a linear IPTV option, and then you have superior customer support, technical support, which we can provide for you, that will help you hold on to those customers and get more customers through positive word of mouth. So don't forget that we can help you there as well. So thanks for joining me. If you learned something or this was interesting, if you'd give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the little bell to be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.